Hot news: Newsom plans to move California Juvenile Justice Division out of Corrections Department. California government. Gavin Newsom's, under the proposal, first unveiled as part of his January budget, the California Health and Human Services Agency would oversee more than 660 young offenders, the majority held at a camp in Pine Grove and 3 detention centers in Stockton and Camarillo. It is a small pop. Corrections and Health and Human Services officials say the plan heralds a cultural change in the state's approach to the youngest in the justice system, and creates opportunities to better bridge educational, mental health, and social services to prepare minors for release. But probation officers, healthcare professionals, and community activists who have long been at the forefront of a push to shut down youth detention centers and improve treatment are wary that the changes could merely be symbolic or worse, halt progress that they say has led to fewer young people in custody. Touring one of the facilities in Stockton on Tuesday, Newsom sought to assuage concerns and said he hopes to initiate the transfer as early as July with approval from the legislature. He pointed to pre-apprentice construction labor programs and new computer coding classes as the kind of initiatives that allow young inmates to learn work and life skills behind bars and would be expanded under the new Health and Human Services framework. "This is about setting a new mark," he told an audience of elected officials, reporters, and young inmates. "We are committed about." California's first ever Surgeon General, Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, who was appointed on Monday, said the new model would allow health officials to move toward one focused on addressing early childhood trauma and preventing children from falling into incarceration in the first place. "Really looking at what we can do for our young folks who are most vulnerable is really critical," said Burke-Harris, who plans to begin her term with a listening tour across the state to hear residents' health care concerns. California is one of only 10 states that houses its juvenile justice division under a state corrections agency. Roughly 40 states. California's juvenile justice system has seen a dramatic transformation over the last 15 years. Bipartisan emphasis was placed on rehabilitation. 8 of 11 once overcrowded youth facilities were ultimately closed, and control of youth detention was shifted to county probation departments under a realignment plan passed by the legislature in 2007 that became the blueprint for government. Jerry Brown to roughly 90% of young people in detention are now on probation or confined to county juvenile halls closer to their homes and families. The state's juvenile. Many questions remain about how Newsom's proposal will be implemented and what effect it will have on day-to-day operations, including the role of corrections-trained youth counselors and pay and work benefits for officers already inside the detention facilities. Unlike adults in prison, young inmates released from corrections facilities are not paroled but returned to local probation departments. "It's unclear what the devil is going to be in the details," said Dominique Nong, Senior Policy Associate at the California branch of the child advocacy nonprofit Children's Defense Fund. "When you change the probation chief said they are concerned about how Newsom's proposal could affect strides made in the last decade to ensure that rehabilitative programs for released youth are based on accountability and research. It is very easy to just say that you are working to implement evidence-based practices, but the Department of Juvenile Justice has actually worked with experts to bring in a lot of programs that are very similar to what we're offering," said Stephanie James, president of the Chief Probation Officers of California, which lobbies for the interests of the state's probation chiefs. "We just want to make." Many working in the juvenile justice system say they are on the alert because they remember the rise of punitive measures toward the most vulnerable in the system. Soaring crime in. Researchers at the time believed teens' brains were fully developed, and public attention tended to focus on so-called superpredators, youths believed to be prone to violent crime because of how they were raised. The studies have said California voters have largely agreed, helping spur a shift in how young defendants are treated in the justice system. Proposition 50. Over the last 2 years, Brown to increase parole opportunities and ease punishment for young people facing charges and serving time, a victory for a statewide coalition of criminal justice groups that brought together celebrities and former youth offenders in a push to divert children from prison. But some worry neuroscience studies that are still being reviewed could push the pendulum too far in the opposite direction, and that the governor is overhauling the system without taking into consideration a nationwide drop in juvenile crime. In California, we need to understand the trends as they are now before we go on in proposing what to do with the juvenile justice system, said Mike Mills, a senior researcher for the Center on Juvenile and Criminal Justice in San Francisco. At the OH. Close Youth Among those who greeted the governor was Derek McDougal, 19, of San Francisco, who has been incarcerated over the last year on charges of attempted murder. As he worked with I want to really start building my own future, he said.
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.